Happy Halloween. Leave now while you still can.
Leave now before Master finds you.
Who is that knocking at my door? Who is that knocking at my door? Who is that knocking at my door? Be gone with you.
Hello everyone, today's video I'm going to be doing the same thing I did last year for horror movies in the month of October, where I have to talk about a lot of good, real scary horror movies. Last year I talked about Teen Wolf with Michael J. Fox, a coming-of-age teen horror comedy for a change-up. Today I'm doing the same thing, I'm switching it up. Again, I'm talking about another coming-of-age horror movie, and that movie is The Monster Squad from 1987. One way of describing this movie is Universal Monsters meets the Goonies. Just like Matinee, this was another movie I found about later in my life as an adult. This is a movie that a lot of kids grew up watching in the late 80s and 90s and feeling nostalgia for this movie. Surprisingly, at the time when this movie came out, it introduced a younger audience generation to getting them to watch the classic Universal Monsters. When it first came out, it was not a hit or success, but ended up getting a cult following in later years. People think this is a remake to the 1970s TV show The Monster Squad, but far from that. And you're all used to hearing me say that the first time I heard about a particular horror movie from James Rolfe, Cinemassacre's Monster Madness movie marathon. But for once, not the case right here. My first time hearing about this movie was from the Nostalgia Critic back in 2014 for his Nostalgia Ween specials. When I saw the Nostalgia Critic's video, the idea to me at first sounded lame and dull to me. The Goonies meets Universal Monsters. As a teenager in the late 2000s and early 2010s, I was a big fan of the Nostalgia Critic and would watch his videos on a bad movie, taking his word for them. But then as I got older, I watched some movies he reviewed, some of them were really bad like Batman and Robin, Waterworld, Kazam, etc., etc., but this one definitely not one of the worst movies he reviewed. Nostalgia Critic was my generation of Mystery Theater 3000. Coming from someone who loves the Universal Monsters and 80s movies, in 2017 I watched this movie by itself without the Nostalgia Critic's video. I sat there and I thought to myself, you know what? This movie's kind of a little lame, and yet it's not that bad. It's not great, but it has some decent entertainment value to some degree. It's enjoyable somewhat. Depends on your taste and mood. When rewatching this movie on rare occasions, it's weird to feel that part of me feels like I'm one of these kids. Because as I said before in my past videos, I'm a big fan and die-hard fan of the Universal Monsters. That was something I could identify with these kids in this movie, to a certain degree, but I did not have a crazy wild adventure like these kids had to go through hell in order to save the world from Dracula. I did not know what the word virgin meant until I was 14. I was not part of a monster club as a kid. Not many kids my age in the 90s and 2000s would watch or did not know what these movies were about the Universal Monsters. I used to feel like an outsider growing up, feeling alone, thinking I was the only one who knew about the classic Universal Monsters horror movies. But from seeing YouTubers or other product placements, Universal Haunted House attractions, the legacy is still going on, continuing, which makes me happy. I was not in a monster club, but I was part of a horror and sci-fi club in my old college, so there you go. That's as close as I get. Just like Sean, my parents used to give me Universal Monster merchandises, toys, Beanie Baby stuffed animals, photos, books, and the monsters. Just like my mother and Sean's mother, she gets confused with the different types of monster when it comes to talking about the other Universal Monster horror characters. No offense, Mom, sorry, but at least you tried, I appreciate it. But unlike Sean, he was braver than I was watching horror movies. He asked his dad then go see the new fictional Groundhog Day horror movie. It was probably a homage to Friday the 13th. They spoof how didn't the horror villain die in the last movie? But of course, they keep making more sequels for the money. If they make Groundhog in Space, Sean will still go see it, even if it stinks. Or Groundhog in the Hood. His dad says no because he has to work, Then he watches the movie with his binoculars, in secret on the roof. Then his dad joins him and brings him Burger King. Oh, how nice. The way that scene is shot, I feel like something out of a Burger King commercial.
Now I'm in the mood for Burger King after talking about this movie. As a joke, here's a fake Burger King commercial. Are you hungry? Stop by Burger King for a nice, delicious Frankenstein Whopper burger. Good burger. With a side order, bloody Dracula French fries. I want to eat your French fries. What we need is some young ketchup. Or mummy onion rings. For a 2 for $5 combo, you can also get an order of Wolfman nuggets. Or the Gillman fish sandwich. Your choice of any soda flavor, Mountain Frankenstein, Cherry Dracula Coke, Invisible Sprite. Stop by Burger King for you and your family to enjoy a nice, spooky meal. I'm running this burger joint, Frankenstein! Disclaimer, this is not a commercial. I am not sponsored by Burger King. Copyright not intended. This is for fun entertainment purpose.
This movie can be cheesy and a little bit over the top sometimes. Just like The Sandlot, this is another movie where you compare the characters to the Goonies and Stand By Me personalities. The funny part is, it has a lot of weird, awkward moments that would not fly today. The kids curse, say foul language that I won't repeat. Phoebe, the little sister, she's cute and adorable, but man, did she have a little potty mouth. When they asked Rudy, the older kid, if he knew any virgins, apparently they needed a virgin to read this book in German to save the world. At first they tried the pretty girl, but she lied that she was not a virgin. Then it's Sean's little sister Phoebe. When I saw this part, I'm like, jeez. This was so disturbing and messed up.
A little over the top and too progressive.
For a film that was marketed for kids and has cursing in it, Dracula calling a little girl a bitch, again, they would not get away with that today. But also, how the heck did they get away with doing that? I guess the actors and writers did not think twice. Why would that older teen kid Rudy join a monster club, want to hang out with a bunch of 12 to 13-year-olds? He was way too old to be hanging out with those kids in the monster club. For someone who was not really the biggest monster fan, he seemed to still know the basics of how to kill the monsters. They call a kid Fat Kid, and his real name is Horace. When he saves the bullies that picked on him in the beginning, they're like, "Thank you, Fat Kid." And he responds back saying this like an action hero tough guy style, like saying, "My name is Horace." I felt bad for the way he was bullied and picked on. There's a part in this movie when he says death scares him, and in real life, this kid is dead. He died in 1997 from pneumonia. One of the bullies was played by Wayne from the Wonder Years. This was pre-Wayne for Jason Harvey. He's basically just a different version of Wayne. Not much else to say about him, but Rudy stands up to Horace, forcing him to be a candy that fell on the ground. There's this old German guy they think was a former Nazi spy, but he was Jewish and a former Holocaust survivor. It was a false rumor that he was not a Nazi. It turns out he was just a nice, sweet old man, was just a harmless person who was doing his own thing, minding his own business, living a quiet, boring life. It was nice of him to give the kids pie. He's like Mr. Merle from The Sandlot. False rumors. The monster makeup, well, it's no Jack Pierce, but this movie was made by TriStar, not Universal. I guess they figured they could not bargain the legal rights issues for Jack Pierce's classic Universal monster makeup. But at least it tries to make it look somewhat authentic, where it resembles a little bit of the monsters. The makeup artist is decent, solid. Stan Winston did a decent job solid making his own version of the Universal monster makeup. It does have good special effects. It has nice visuals paying tribute to Gothic Castle from horror movies. When I was rewatching this movie, it hit me to see some homages to the original classic Universal monster movies. For instance, when Phoebe's by the lake, she sees the Frankenstein monster, but of course, the monster did not accidentally drown her like in the original 1931 Boris Karloff Frankenstein movie. Phoebe shows her older brother and his friends the monster. They freak out, but then they decide to have her join the club. Dracula finds the monster's casket and resurrects him. Reminds me of Abbott and Costello meets Frankenstein. Dracula telling the monster to get Van Helsing's book. The monster calls him Master, just like in Abbott and Costello meets Frankenstein. When the Wolfman is human, Dracula treats him like his slave. Basically, the Wolfman is the semi-Renfield to this movie.
John Grise, who plays the Wolfman in this movie, says the famous line, "I turn to a werewolf," and no one believes him, just like the original Lon Chaney Jr. Wolfman. Sorry, John Grise, but no offense, Lon Chaney Jr. said it better. Sorry.
This is one of the first times where we see almost all the monsters are in the same movie together, unless you want to count Rankin Bass's Mad Monster Party, but that was more on puppets than live action. The only Universal monster character that is missing is the Invisible Man. Despite the book and the characters in the public domain, I guess maybe they thought it was too much overload, or they didn't have the money to do practical effects, like in the original Invisible Man movie from 1933. Despite the Gill-Man being in this movie, the characters never referred to him by the name the Gill-Man, and the reason behind it is because they could not use the legal rights name. Despite they put his name at the end credits, the look of the Gill-Man is pretty cool, decent, solid, and spot on to a certain degree. Almost identical to Maleficent Patrick's original Gill-Man design, but at the same time, it does not even come close to topping the original Gill-Man design by the late great Maleficent Patrick. The Frankenstein monster was played by Tom Noonan, who was a serial killer, tooth fairy, and manhunter from 1986, directed by Michael Mann. Crazy to see him make a different transition in this movie. The makeup monster is okay, it's no Jack Pierce, but I can respect why not everyone would like his monster makeup effect. To me it was alright, just decent. The Wolfman look is okay. It's funny when they hit the Wolfman in the balls, the kid responds saying, "Wolfman's got nards." Or they blow up the Wolfman, but his body parts come together, like the T-1000 from Terminator 2 Judgment Day in a similar way. First time I ever saw that in a movie where the Wolfman blows up, and does that mean he's dead? I guess not. Not even explosions or dynamite can kill the Wolfman, at least in this universe. The mummy makeup look is also good too. Rarely do I say this or point out Easter eggs in movies. If you look in the background, you'll notice they had Burger King because Burger King marketed and sponsored this movie. It also makes me think how when I was a little kid in the late 90s, Burger King sold Universal Monster little toy figures. I had only 2 of them. I only had the Wolfman and the Gill-Man. I still have them somewhere around my house in storage, but as usual, here's a photo showing what the Burger King Universal Monster toys looked like. It surprised me that Burger King only did 4 of them. They did not have a toy figure of the Bride of Frankenstein, the Mummy, and the Invisible Man. Maybe it could have been some kind of like licensing restrictions possibly. Maybe Burger King was only allowed a certain number of the Universal monsters. This will make you laugh or surprise you. Originally Liam Neeson was supposed to be in this movie, but his scene was cut and yet he still got paid. Dustin Diamond, pre-Saved by the Bell, was also in this movie, where he plays a kid trading baseball cards, but his scene was cut. No matter how corny this movie sounds, it's surprising to say it's a fun movie. It's not supposed to have an explanation, and not supposed to be taken seriously. If you love the Universal monsters and 80s movies, then this movie is for you. Don't try to think too much logic into this movie. But at the same time, it can be cringeworthy sometimes to a certain degree. You'd also make the debate and argument this is the last decent, good, solid, semi-Universal Monsters team mashup movie compared to what was to come in the next 30 years for the Universal Monsters being remade, where in recent years they tried too hard to make the Universal Monsters into their own version of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Avenger-type style. In the 90s, they were remade being more true to the original source novels of Mary Shelley and Bram Stoker's novels. Starting with Coppola's Dracula, Frankenstein with Robert De Niro. I heard that was bad, I never saw it, so no comment. Wolfman with Jack Nicholson, which seems a semi-debatable and a semi-remake to The Wolfman, but again, I never saw it. In 2010, The Wolfman was remade. Honestly, I thought that movie sucked, despite it seems to have a cult following in recent years, and I don't understand why that is. Brendan Fraser's The Mummy, people describe as an action-adventure movie like Indiana Jones, but again, I never saw that movie either. Hollow Man, this one seems to be mixed from what I've heard from fans. Again, I apologize, I never saw this one, no comment. I will check this out eventually sometime in the near future, be my own judgment. People thought back in 1987 this movie was bad when it first came out, But compared to Tom Cruise's 2017 Mummy movie remake, Dracula Untold, I, Frankenstein, and 2004's Van Helsing, this movie's an Academy Award material compared to how they are trying too hard to reinvent the classic Universal monsters. Heck, it would be cool if Stranger Things had a season like this, but more on the serious side, of course. I'm not sure if the next season will be the last one, but if it is, I could see an idea of Stranger Things facing the Universal monsters as a comic book possibly. That would be cool and awesome.
This just occurred to me as I was editing this video. If they made a movie like this today, it would be Freddy Krueger, Jason Voorhees, Pinhead, Leatherface, and Michael Myers. But unlike Universal Monsters that are owned by the same company, these characters are owned by different companies, so the chances of that are very low and slim, so don't hold your breath on that one. As cool as that would be, Michael, Freddy, Jason, Pinhead, and Leatherface, but again, never gonna happen. The question is, would this idea take place in the 80s, back when these characters were big and popular at that time, or to take place in like the modern day, like either 2000s, 2010s, or 2020s? Because they had to take place during the modern day, the current like generation right now, like trying to please and satisfy modern audiences, what's big and popular around this time, rather than the 80s for the nostalgia value the 80s has. But then again, thanks to Stranger Things, the 80s has made a comeback. As a joke in a funny way, this would be like a new modern day like Abbott and Costello meets Frankenstein. But at the same time, it won't top Abbott and Costello meets Frankenstein.
That was my review of the Monster Squad. Like this video, hit that bell button to get the latest updates on my YouTube channel. And stay tuned tomorrow for some more horror movie reviews. See you tomorrow.